It is a little bit after the hour, and I want to welcome everyone to the 9th meeting of the 46th year of the Rotary Club of Dublin, Worthington. Today's invocation is going to be done by Al Wu. Al, take it away.
Thank you. Our Father in heaven, we give thanks for the pleasure of gathering together for this meeting. We give thanks for life, for freedom to enjoy it all, and for all other blessings. We pray for health and strength to carry on and try to live as you would have us live. This we ask in your name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and the republic for which it stands,
one
nation under God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Al.
In there.
And
That line.
that was an interesting chorus, but well done. Yeah. So, President-elect Steve, can you go ahead and introduce guests and request for happy dollars? And I think you had another announcement.
Yes. So I'm trying to see if we have any guests today. I will hold off on introducing our speaker. And I do not see any guests. So then, yes, I am calling for happy dollars. And I need 4 today. And there's 32 people, so we can do this. Somebody shout out a happy dollar.
Well, certainly the fact that Ohio State's playing, I'm throwing at least $2 in. People can outbid me, but I'm very happy with that one.
Right on. I did not hear that, so I guess that is good news.
I have a happy dollar. It's actually a happy dollar for me. I can't throw one in for my wife, but today we have been married 58 years.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Exciting.
To each other, I might add.
Now that's just impressive.
I have a happy dollar. So the ladies of Rotary are meeting tonight at Cap City.
Nice.
Awesome. That should be fun.
Yes, we hope so.
I'll throw in a happy dollar for George Norris. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
George successfully had his knee replaced yesterday. I imagine he's a little bit uncomfortable today, but he's at least at home. So I'll put in a couple bucks for him for that occasion.
That's awesome. Thanks for letting us know.
I have a happy dollar or two. And also, George is a bionic guy. He just had his hip done in what? Was it May or something?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Okay. My grandson, my oldest grandson, Noah Silliman, who's a senior at Thomas Worthington High School, is on the cross-country team. He placed 1st and 3rd in his first 2 meets, so that's good. And my other happy dollar is that Trent Bowers, our club member and superintendent of schools, videoed Noah running at one of the meets and put it on his Facebook page. And then he sent Noah a personal note of congratulations, handwritten. And if that's not something for that is amazing that a superintendent will do that. So thanks to Trent. And yeah. Shows how much he cares about kids.
Yeah, we're lucky to have him in our club. Who else? Anybody else with a happy dollar?
Pete Barnard. I have a happy dollar or two. Just got a notification this last week that my granddaughter, 2nd granddaughter in Grove City at Central Crossing High School, she's a junior member of the volleyball team. Towson University in Baltimore has offered her, and she's accepted a full ride to Towson University as a volleyball player.
All right. Nice. That's a great win.
My daughter's very happy.
All right, I'll take one more. Who's got one to send us home?
I've got one.
Awesome, Mike.
I have, Friday, I lost my wireless router here at home and my server at the office. As of yesterday, I got one of them back. So it's happy to be back on the air again.
I'm guessing it's the wireless router, just,
Yeah,
looking at
wireless
context
router
clues here.
came in yesterday, put in 4 plugs, and it's up and going. So
Awesome. Fantastic. All right, so that was a great turnout. Thank you, everyone. We are going to try something a little different today to spice things up. We're going to try a poll. I've never done one of these. I've tested it earlier, seemed like it worked, but we're going to find out. So I'm going to post this poll, and if everybody can, just respond to it, and hopefully we can get 32 responses, and we'll see what happens. So I'm going to launch the poll. Does everybody see the poll?
Yeah.
We've got 51%, 58% voted, 62, 65. $72. I'll give it another 10 more seconds here.
All you have to do is check one of the boxes, right?
Yeah. Well, people are thinking. It's a tough question.
What I was going to say. They're thinking about it.
Yeah. Some answers are switching around. All right. 4 more seconds here. Okay. End the poll. I'm going to share the results. So hopefully you guys can see the results. The correct answer was 53. So 6 out of 23 people got it. And 53 members have qualified for this award, which represents 62% of our club's members. And I want to thank John for coming up with this poll. I hope everybody had fun. Maybe we'll try it again in the future.
That's great.
Okay. With that said, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Jim.
Okay. Thank you. I like that. That was an excellent poll. Appreciate it. And now we have announcements. And is Alan still on, or Steve? Start with either of you.
I'll announce that the Community Service Committee will meet by Zoom tomorrow afternoon at 3:30.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Jim, am I supposed to have an announcement?
Yes. How about the golf tournament?
Golf tournament. Oh, yeah. I mean, if people are still looking for a team, I think Ted Imbush and Andrew Sainholtz were looking to form a team. I'm not sure if they actually did, but it is next week. I cannot remember the date. It's on my calendar. I'm sorry. So if you want to be involved, reach out to me or reach out to Alan Grossman. We will try to find a home for you to have a team.
Okay. Sounds good. Any other announcements?
Hi, Jim. Sorry, it's Alan. I'm having connection issues. The date is the 22nd, next Tuesday.
Okay. Any other announcements?
I'll just say that to keep the club informed, the board will be meeting tomorrow at 7:30 a.m. To discuss a number of things, including the viability of meeting in person again. So hopefully we may have some information to share with the club soon.
Okay. So for today's program, I'm going to introduce Dave Hanson, who will then introduce our speaker. And we have certainly an illustrious speaker today. Dave?
Thank you very much, Jim. I'm very pleased to introduce our speaker today, having had the privilege of collaborating with him over the past 30 years at The Ohio State University. Professor Ratan Lal is recognized as one of the most influential world scientists. He was awarded the 2019 Japan Prize for the Sustainable Management of Soils for Global Food Security and the Mitigation of Climate Change. I believe that prize was $500,000. And next month, he will be receiving the World Food Prize, $250,000, which the World Food Prize was established by Norman Borlaug, who some of you may know was the only agricultural scientist to have received the Nobel Peace Prize for his work on developing and disseminating high-yielding grain varieties that led to the resolution of recurrent famine and hunger in Asia and Africa over the past century. Professor Lal is a soil scientist by training, having received his PhD at The Ohio State University. Prior to coming to Ohio State University, he spent 16 years at the International Institute for Tropical Agriculture in Ibadan, Nigeria, where he really established, I think, his objectives and goals for his scientific career. And obviously, he's followed through on them very effectively. Over the past 30 years, he has focused this research and practice on how to sequester carbon in soils, thereby reducing greenhouse gas emission effects that are leading to global warming and climate change. He currently directs the Carbon Management and Sequestration Research Center at The Ohio State University, which he established several decades ago. Ratan, my friend, the Zoom podium is yours.
Dave, thank you so much. It's a great honor to be part of this event today, and I appreciate your inviting me. I'm going to try to share the screen, see if it works this time as well. Can you see it?
Yes, go ahead and full screen.
Yeah, I'm going to.
Perfect.
Thank you. I'm going to pick up from where Dave left about Norman Borlaug. I think he was the one who really saved hundreds of millions of people from starvation. So between 61 and 2017, while the population went up from 3 billion to 7.6 billion, the cereal grain production globally went up from 740 million tons to 3 billion tons. And that was the Green Revolution miracle. Consequently, even though the population went up, the per capita cereal grain production went up from 240 kilogram to 400 kilogram. And Norman Borlaug is really, from that point of view, saved hundreds of millions from people from starvation and is recognized globally for his contribution. The Green Revolution, however, was made possible because of several things. The population went up by a factor of 3, and cereal grain production went up by a factor of 3.3, 3.4. Therefore, per capita went up very much, even though with increase in population. And because nitrogen fertilizer use went up 9 times. Phosphorus fertilizer went up 5 times. Potassium fertilizer also went up 5 times. Pesticide, you divide by 0, it went by infinity, but drastically pesticide use between 1960 and 2020. Irrigation area and globally went up 2.5 times. So there was a lot of inputs, especially of chemicals, fertilizers and pesticides, and a lot of expansion of land area. 40% of the Earth's land surface is now being used for agriculture. 77% of that is allocated to raising animals. 70% of all the water withdrawal globally is used for irrigation. And 30 to 35% of all the greenhouse gas emissions are contributed by agriculture. In spite of that, 1 in 9 person is food insecure. 40 million people in the US are food insecure. 1.7 million in Ohio are food insecure. 500,000 children in Ohio, 1 in 5, are food insecure. And 2 to 3 to 7 people in the world, almost 2 billion, latest report, are malnourished. Lack of protein, lack of micronutrients. So we have a different sets of problems since the Green Revolution era. The trend of undernourishment globally, it's gone up recently and projected to go up, especially due to pandemic, by 2030, both in world and Africa. It may come down some in Asia, South Asia especially, but Africa and the world is going up. So since the Green Revolution, and I want to again personally convey my appreciation to Dr. Borlaug for what he did, but there are some environmental issues which I don't think he had anything to do with them, but they have happened and we need to address them, especially the soils are degraded, waters are polluted, algal bloom, you know about it. What happened in the city of Toledo 3, 4, 5 years ago. We still have Ohio River, almost 900 miles, suffering from prone to algal bloom. Impure air globally, these days west part of the US, San Francisco and other areas, due to fire, you know what that is causing. There was a recently report actually this last week of the biodiversity loss between 1970 and today, 2020. 2/3 of the biodiversity has gone extinct, 2/3. A major issue that certainly was not envisioned or thought about or intended, but it has happened. Degraded soils, 3.5 billion hectares, that's almost 1/4 of the ice-free land area, of which water erosion affects 1.1 billion hectare. Hectare, by the way, is 2.5 acres. Wind erosion 0.6, salinization, and then the climate change. Over the 20th centuries, since 1750, over that period, 1 degree centigrade increase. 2/3 of that has happened since 1975. In fact, as of today, 21st century, the first 2 decades, the increase is 1.1 degrees centigrade. By global warming since the global warming of 1.5 degrees centigrade expected anytime. I think these statistics of between 2030 and 2050 is no longer correct. We now believe it may happen anytime before 2030, 1.5 degrees change. Rate of increase is almost 0.2 of a degree per decade, and the tolerable rate is half of that, 0.1 degrees centigrade per decade. Sea level rise more than 2 millimeters per year. In fact, last decade was 3.4 millimeters per year, but over the 20th century, it was 1.8. Change in precipitation is happening, including in Ohio, and extreme events, including the recent Laura hurricane that we had, their intensity, frequency is going up tremendously. Short-term changes are happening, and what we can do to mitigate and adapt to climate change. Geoengineering is discussed about it. Managing soil is an option that is subject of interest to me. So I'll talk briefly about it. What it means is putting carbon dioxide into the plants on agricultural lands or on trees elsewhere, and then returning that biomass back to the land. That part, returning the biomass produced within a land unit back to that unit, is important. If you take from one unit and put into another unit, such as for manure or putting sawdust or biochar from one place to another, technically that is robbing Peter to pay Paul. So it's a distribution, not sequestration. No-till agriculture began in Ohio. We have plots at Worcester and few other sites, London and Hoytville, close to Toledo, close to Detroit. In fact, that area. These plots are not from Worcester. These are my plots from Africa. This picture was taken in 1970, exactly 50 years ago. But this crop is not soybean, it's cowpeas. And I was able to show experimentally in 14 countries, from Senegal to Somalia, that the system works. And I was able to grow corn about 5 tons to a hectare. That's about 2 tons to acre. At that time, beans about a ton. And the yield in Africa, sub-Saharan West, is still about 1.5 tons. What I was getting at that time in one crop was 5 tons, sometimes 6 to 7 tons. So obviously the science never got translated into action. We also demonstrated, again, picture from Africa, same my experiments, set up this one in 72. The plot in the front is also no-till. The difference was that we decided to do what farmers do, take away the crop residue. The one in the back, the only difference is same varieties, same time of planting, same rate of fertilizer. The residue was left behind, never removed it. This difference in growth and soil health is after 15 years. I took this picture when I was leaving that, and after that, these experiments unfortunately were discontinued. So removing the crop residue under those conditions is not a viable option. That means if the farmers cannot do it, government got to do something to do. And the reason is because residue does many things. We wanted to see if that effect can be seen in Ohio. This experiment was in 2012 in Coshocton, Ohio. Josh Beniston here was my graduate student. He is about 6'8". And this was a plot which was residue was removed from 2004 to 2012. You may remember 2012, summer was particularly dry. Exactly 5 feet away was this plot where the residue was left back. Soil was very moist. The drought did not bother it much. Soil temperature at the afternoon during the heat wave was about 10 degrees centigrade in the soil cooler, and the crop yield, you can make a guess yourself, was almost double. So if there is anything we call climate smart agriculture, that is what you're looking at. Leaving the residue back on sloping land, such as at Coshocton, Ohio. That brings me to the question of what is regenerative agriculture. We call it eco-intensification. The idea is to produce more from less. Less fertilizer, less energy, less irrigation, less pesticide, less plowing, so that we can save these resources, not only in terms of causing less pollution, but also we can save land and water for nature. And I want to mention that because FAO and other organization, for their good meaning, good reasoning, good thinking, they think we need another 250 million hectare. Again, hectare is 2.5 acre, between now and 2050 to feed the growing population. I think the other way around. I think we can save 200 million hectare and put it back to the nature, set aside for nature conservation, and at the same time sequester carbon, if we follow the philosophy of regenerative agriculture. As an example, if we can put carbon in depleted, degraded soils such as in Africa and Asia, Central America, Caribbean, Haiti, and so forth, 1 ton of carbon as organic matter, as humus, the black material that sometimes you see when you buy potting soil or any other humus material, If you can put 1 ton of it in the depleted root zone, the top 8 inches, 12 inches, we can increase for the same management, like you've seen those pictures from Africa and from Coshocton, about 300 pounds per acre, 300 kilogram per hectare of corn grains, about 20 to 50 soybeans, wheat, rice, all these crop for the same level of input. And if you multiply that for the entire developing countries suffering from hunger, the total food grain production in a year is about 30 to 50 million tons more grains. And that is the way, if you restore soil health, restore organic matter content, control erosion by putting the residue back and growing cover crop, there are many win-win options, including now fertilizer, nitrogen and phosphorus and other moving into the waters and causing the algal bloom. I know we are thinking about what can we do with water once it reaches stream and lakes. That's too late. The horse has already gone, left the stable. We got to make sure the water passes through the soil and not over the soil. That means something got to be done with land. Therefore, my slogan has been that rather than saying we need NPK as fertilizer, we should be thinking about CNPK. C is biomass carbon, anything. And if you do that, maybe NPK, we don't have to put as much as we normally do. Furthermore, most of the runoff will go through the soil and will not be washing away. So we need to keep thinking about how to increase the carbon input into the soil. Carbon input, carbon stock in soil is like a bank account. If you want your bank account to go up, the amount of money you deposit has to be more than what you withdraw. And soil carbon and soil fertility and soil health is exactly the same. So the input which you can make through various means, biochar, compost, cover crop, crop residue, put anything back, must exceed what you withdraw from erosion, leaching, and decomposition, which we should try to minimize. Unfortunately, most places, including some in the US, definitely overseas, the balance is in the other direction. The losses are greater, therefore we keep losing the productivity and the fertility of the soil. If we did what I was just explaining on a global scale, if somebody were to turn the right switch on tomorrow morning, between 2020 and 2100, we can put carbon back in soil at the rate of about 2.5 gigaton. Giga is billion, 90, of carbon per year globally. If you take it from the point of view of soil alone, between now and 2100, 80 years, 180 gigaton. Vegetation, that will be forest, trees, shrubs, another 150 gigaton. Total, it comes to about atmospheric drawdown of carbon dioxide of more than 150 parts per million of CO2. That's a low-hanging fruit, and it has many, many, many co-benefits. And the co-benefits, in addition to climate change adaptation and mitigation, food security, nutritional security, water quality, drought tolerance, saving of land, saving of fertilizers, saving of pesticides, biodiversity. That residue is food for biodiversity. 1/4 of all terrestrial biodiversity is in the top 12 inches of soil. So if you want to say biodiversity, that is where it is. So what my vision of agriculture of future is, think about a plant, little different than what Norman Borlaug thought. He thought, I don't need crop residue, I don't need root, I need more grains. Therefore, he was interested in a short-statured variety, which have more grain, which served us very well. But we do need varieties which have large stalk, which have deeper root system, may have lesser grain. And I do not have any problem with having lesser grain, because out of the 3 billion tons of cereal we produce, 1 billion ton never reach any stomach, human or animal. So why keep producing more and more when we are wasting almost 1/3 of we produce? Instead, why not produce more biomass and put those more biomass back to the land and mitigate climate change and improve soil health? I would also like to see a plant that I can talk to, preferably in English, but maybe not, probably molecular-based signal when they are under stress. If they are being chewed by grasshopper like locust, we had problem in East Asia and East Africa and South Asia lately. This summer, South Asia lost season in East Africa. When there is a biotic or abiotic stress, one form or the other, plants emit signal that we can detect and we can intervene. We must leave the crop residue, as I talk about, grow a cover crop, do not plow the land, and we try to integrate, like we did before 60s, crops with trees and livestock. And I don't mean here concentrated livestock raising, stall feeding. I mean more term like grazing and integration of livestock with crops. And if the soil health is improved, organic carbon can become 1.5, 2.5, maybe 3%. That's what it was before we converted the forest. That is, some of our Worcester plots are getting close to that level. Soils become disease suppressive. If you put very good compost on the soil, that will do the same thing. Because of high soil biodiversity, it has some organisms that predate on pathogens. So they become disease suppressive soil. And if we have to apply additional nutrients and water, it should be applied directly to the plant roots, not on the surface, and with the water in such a way they are absorbed mostly by the plants and not leaking out either into the waters or into the atmosphere. And that is where the future agriculture should really look like. If we did that, right now we have 700 million hectares, the first column of land area under cereals. By 2100, we will definitely have no more than 500. The total fertilizer use, which you have 200 million tons now, the next column you notice in purple, will be no more than 100 million. And yet the cereal yield global average will go up from 3.3 tons to about 7 tons because we are using our resources properly. Per capita calorie consumption will also go up and the food quality will be better, especially in terms of protein and micronutrients. So we can reduce the land area, the fertilizers, the pesticide, the irrigation water, and yet produce more. And that is the philosophy, using the best and save rest of the land back for nature. We got to do that, especially the pandemic has indicated to us that it is working with nature, which will be really beneficial. So just the last two slides, Dave. The one is to answer the question, what would I suggest to make land management a solution to environmental issues? The logical answer is to objectively and critically consider how do we take soil resources for granted and use them as a personal property and not do that. I really think we need something like rights of soil legislation. We have Water Quality Act, we have Air Quality Act, we are urgently in need of Soil Health Act. A prudent strategy would imply making soil and agriculture an integral part of the solution and empowering farmers and land managers to restore degraded soils, afforest the denuded land, and return a lot of marginal agricultural land back to nature. It would be impossible to keep global temperature at safe level unless there is a radical transformation in the ways by which humans produce and consume their food and manage the earth's finite and fragile resources in a very haphazard and improper manner. The last thing I want to mention is something which I really believe in. I believe and I think what has happened to the politics in Europe, the Brexit and other things happening, and what is happening at our own southern borders, I think we have to think how land can be managed so that the people who jump into the Mediterranean or come crossing our borders do not have to do that. The land is able to support them. I believe that depleting soil organic matter and dwindling soil fertility, degrading soil and denuded landscape, recurring drought and intensifying heat waves, increasing salinity and reducing water renewability, contaminating water, polluting air, low crop yield, perpetual hunger, marginal living, desperateness are bigger threat to global peace and security than our ICBM and nuclear weapons. Why? Because the health of soil, plants, animal, people, and the environment is one and indivisible, and we must pay attention to it. Thank you. That's what I want to say. Thanks, Dave.
Any questions?
I would be interested in knowing, because I really don't have this figure at my fingertips, but what percentage of Ohio farmers are actually using these carbon sequestration practices on their land? And why is it that maybe more farmers are not using them?
Oh, Dave, that's a good question. The rough estimate is that 1/3, 30%. But that is not a real system that I was describing about. Real system I was describing, and we have been doing at Worcester and other places, is never plow. And here, most farmers, there are some who are not plowing at all, but there are most who count as a no-till. They plow 1 year by chisel, and next year they do no-till. So it's a rotational no-till, not real no-till. And I think that is applicable throughout the US. Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Paraguay, some of these countries really adopting real no-till and doing much better. I wish we could take some of our farmers from the Midwest to go and see what is happening in Rondônia and Mato Grosso and others, Sao Paulo and that area. And you know, some of our student, Yuka Sa and Yuri Zen and other, they've really done a great job there. So we can do, then the question is why? Well, there are some risks. When you transition from plow to no-till, the first 1, 2, 3 years, it is possible there is a yield reduction. And there is, of course, investment in machinery. The no-till seed drill cost $100,000 plus. And so I think what we could do, and that's what I was talking about, soil, not the soil, the farm bill, that we should incentivize farmer one way or the other to pay for the amount of carbon they sequester. And my estimate for that payment for the Midwest is $16 per acre per year for at least first 3, 4, 5 years to encourage that to happen.
Now, why?
I have a question. How receptive is the political process or the government pundits to your message?
Right now, not very receptive. But I think that doesn't mean being very negative or a pessimist. I think things change. A few years ago, even my scientific colleague didn't believe we had it. When I showed those plots in Africa to board of trustees, that include very high level people from the US AID and Ford and Rockefeller Foundation and other places. Even the board of trustees, who was a French person chair, he said, well, we have been doing so many experiments throughout Francophone Africa, and our recommendation are just the opposite: deep plow at the end of the season and shallow plow, and so water can penetrate encrusted soil, and here you are talking nonsense. So I think these things take time. For somebody to get a Japan prize for that, something simple and food prize, I think that indicates things are changing.
Do you have a champion in the government system?
I do not know of anybody in government, but Mr. Gore certainly is very fond of it. He's not in government, of course. But the European government, yes. The French Minister of Agriculture came to my lab along with his advisors, 8, 9 of them. And when they recommended 2015 climate summit, this was the recommendation. German government, Dave Hansen has met his group, Mr. Klaus Toffer, former Minister of Environment, very strong supporter. French, not French, Spanish Minister of Agriculture. I met with him last year. Prince Charles has a very strong program on this type of agriculture. So there is a good spot. President of Iceland came to Ohio State. He was very supportive of this. So I think we are a little bit behind here, but it's a matter of time. I'm sure it will change.
Yeah, I think that somehow a marketing push would help your cause to amplify this message, because I think it's great.
Yeah, I think few of our senators certainly have shown interest. Mr. Brown have shown interest in this kind of agriculture. Senator Voinovich was interested. In fact, he called, he was co-chair of the climate committee, a Senate committee, and he invited me 4 or 5 Senate hearings. So I think things can improve. They will.
One question is, what prevents the residue return? And can you still do that without doing tilling? Or can you do it with doing tilling?
Well, with that, what it means is residue has to be left on the surface. When you do it, because that is where it prevents erosion and runoff and moderates temperature and decreases evaporation rate and so forth. So to plow and then put the residue back, that is not a practical, feasible option. But there are several other options have been tried engineering-wise, doing a strip tillage to have a small, narrow strip, say 4 inches wide, and plow that where the seed will go rather than plowing the whole thing. There's a possibility of what we call guided traffic, so that the traffic which causes compaction, the tractor tire every year can go at the same place using some kind of precision tillage. So there are many, but I do not see any reason why we cannot just leave the residue, except in a very region where the spring is too cold and too wet. Then the soil is waterlogged and also too cold. In fact, it happens in Ohio also once in a while. Anytime spring is too cold, it doesn't get warm up. Seedlings in an unplowed soil are low, having slow start, and a plowed plot next door, and I have witnessed that, have better, but they do catch up later on. I think the idea is that if the farmers may get lesser yield, 2, 3, 4, the benefits to climate, water, biodiversity, saving in energy, profit margin may be even better. I saw Doug Southgate's name on the list this morning. Maybe he can say something about the profit margin part. In general, yield may be less, but profit is better. So we should be really thinking about not the maximum yield, but optimum yield and a stable yield. When they talk about best farmer of the county, fair, let's give the honor to a farmer who has done probably more production per unit carbon input into the system, or more per unit input of fertilizer and pest than the maximum yield per se. So those kind of things may be helpful.
Need to unmute Doug.
Oh, was I muted?
No, Doug.
Oh, Doug is muted. Oh, okay.
Hello, Ratan. How are you doing?
Hi, Doug. I think you and several of your colleagues did look at the profitability under no-till, isn't it?
Yeah, it basically enhances it. In some ways, it enhances farm profitability, as you emphasized. Going to the more sustainable system that you're proposing saves labor above all else, and less tillage, meaning more plowing, less machine time, less diesel fuel, and so forth. So that's a plus. And as you pointed out, Ratan, the yield penalty, the diminished harvest that you might experience in some fields, not all fields, but some fields, can really be pretty minor. So I think what's interesting, we have a common friend, Bill Richards, and he was one of the early innovators. Bill farms south of here, outside of Circleville, has about 10,000 acres of corn, and he developed this because he said, I can make money and I can build up my land as I go along, precisely as Ratan has envisioned here. Ratan, if there's time, I'd like to hear you talk about Africa. Brent Sanjan and I are working, we're not as far along as you are, Ratan. Our book is in our head, but we're working on a book called The End of Deforestation, and focused on Latin America. Because the diminished population growth, Latin America's population will peak about 30 years from now, maybe 40 years from now. And the same thing is happening in Asia. But Africa is an exception. It's also a place, as you know, with all the time you spent in Nigeria, Africa, even though all of our family trees trace back to Africa, right? We are all descended from Africans. It is not for the most part, a very hospitable environment for farming. And that's where the challenge really exists, and where rapid population growth is still happening. It's exceptional that way and in so many other ways. But if you could talk about the challenge that needs to be met above all else in sub-Saharan Africa, if you agree that's the place.
Sure. So, thank you. Yes, Doug, thank you so much. No, the Africa is a challenge. And as I mentioned, the average cereal yield of corn, sorghum, millet is still continental level, about 1.5 ton per hectare. And there is no reason why it could not be 3 and 4 times more.
Yeah.
So really, it's a matter of governance. It's a matter of pro-farmer policies. It's a matter of rewarding farmers to do what can be done. And 2-3 things which are very good that are happening. 2015 was the climate summit in Paris. 2016 was the climate summit in Marrakech, Morocco, and the same French minister, along with the Minister of Agriculture from all countries of Africa, 44 of them, were present at Marrakech, and I had the honor to talk to them, explaining this same thing. And they came up with a program called AAA, Adapting African Agriculture. So this was the main theme. And to my pleasant surprise, and Dave knows when he was director, we used to have some correspondence with Howard Buffett. And Howard started demos after he would finish his plowing in Peoria and somewhere outside of Lincoln. He would go and demonstrate to farmers in Zambia and Ghana and other places how to do no-till agriculture. I'm not sure whether he still does that. But last week I talked to an African organization with the help of Michigan State University. They are going to have another summit on how agriculture can be kind of priming up of the agriculture. And they talked about what can we do, and this was the topic. I think I'm going to talk to them again during the World Food Prize. So they are thinking that the government may take proactive action and try to implement what we have been known for the last 50 years and not being translated. So I think there are signs, but no definite action yet.
Yeah, Ratan, if you'll permit me, you spoke about the need for pro-farmer policies, and I heartily second that idea. But just so that my fellow club members understand, the challenge in Africa is to move away from distinctly anti-farmer policies. And the figure which have been in place basically since independence in the 1960s. I think it's getting a bit better, but there's a long way to go, as indicated by the average yield figure of 1.5 metric tons per hectare. Now, just to put that in perspective, that is equivalent to about 25 bushels per acre corn.
Right.
Okay, so most club members are not farmers, but I'll tell you this about 25 bushels per acre. That's what the average corn yield was in the United States the first year that the U.S. Department of Agriculture took measurements and made reports. That was 1866. So the time when the Civil War ended, 25 bushels per acre. It was still, our average yield in this country for corn was still 25 bushels per acre in the middle 1930s, on the eve of the hybrid revolution and so forth. So that was the baseline for the United States before modernization of various sort took place in agriculture in this country. That's where Africa still is. Again, I think we are agreeing with each other heartily because of an anti-farmer policy bias.
Exactly. And somewhere that had to change. Farming profession has to be given respect it deserves. And I don't want to go into that part, what I mean, but right now, farmers are really the most neglected part of the society there, and that is one of the issues. The other part is Asia. We had very fertile soil and throughout the Indo-Gangetic plains, all the way from Pakistan to Bangladesh, Nepal, everywhere. A very, very productive land. Irrigated, you got a water tower of the Himalayas, so they could irrigate maybe excessively, unfortunately. And they dumped fertilizer. And the productivity went up from 50 million tons to 300 million tons in India alone. There have been the side issues, as I mentioned, water and the other. But Africa is nowhere near that part. Only 6% of what can be irrigated is being irrigated. The average fertilizer rate in sub-Saharan Africa, leaving the Arab part out, is still below 15 pounds per acre.
We need to wrap it up if we can here.
Very good. I'll stop there.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. There is a lot of good information there. I would encourage people, if you can stay on after we close the formal part, to answer any other questions. But it's certainly not only a fascinating, but really timely topic to begin to look at how we can impact climate change with better agricultural processes. So we move now on to the four-way test, if Steve can. And next week, I will say, next week we have Mark Meekum with the Ohio Children's Alliance, who will speak about foster care in COVID and the challenges and how we are meeting them and not meeting those challenges in Ohio. So that's Mark Meekum next week as our speaker. The four-way test, as we begin, the four-way test of the things we think, say, and do. Number one,
the truth.
The truth. Number two,
The fairness of
Concern.
Number three, Will it,
Build goodwill and better
Goodwill and better
friendships.
friendships.
and number 4, will it be?
Will be beneficial
to all
to all
concerned.
concerned.
Thank you all for joining us today. Have a good week, and if you can and want to participate, again, tomorrow at 3 is a meeting of the local community service committee, and you can get the link through Nick, and he can set you up to come on to that by Zoom. So thank you all again. Have a good day.